Wasn't that great?
Yes.
They're wonderful. We'll see how the time goes. Maybe if we can, we maybe ask both Mehdad and Gulsanam to play for us after the lecture. Right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. On behalf of the Persian Cultural Arts Council at the Bowers, I really want to thank Dr. Mousavi for driving all the way from LA in rain. And he's going to give us this wonderful lecture. The reason I picked this topic this time for the museum was because of the Benjamin Franklin exhibit that we have. Usually councils try to bring in some programs that are somehow associated with the existing exhibit at the museum. So I was thinking about what I can bring in that somehow satisfies, Benjamin Franklin's exhibit. So I remember Dr. Mousavi's lecture, and I thought, well, this is wonderful. We can show the cultural connection and relationship that has existed between Iran and the US for many, many years. We've actually had other programs that has shown and proven the fact that people are people everywhere, and we connect in many different ways, particularly when it comes to arts and culture. So this is the reason for doing this lecture. And Dr. Mousavi was born and raised in Iran, and I know his father was a very famous archaeologist too, so that would be, really an honor for me to listen to his lecture as well today. A little background on Dr. Mousavi. He was born in Tehran, Iran. He also did his elementary and secondary school in Tehran. He studied in Lyon, France, and took his BA in art history and his master's of art and ancient history and archaeology from the University of Lyon. He came to the US and he completed his PhD in Near Eastern Studies from University of California in Berkeley. And his interests ranged from archaeology to second millennium BC in Iran, and also on the Achaemenid architecture, my favorite. As Dr. Daryei knows, Dr. Mousavi also has published widely, particularly on the archaeology of Iran and history. He recently published a book with Dr. Stronach, another famous professor, in Ancient Iran from the Air. That's the title of the book, Ancient Iran from the Air. And it has been published in Germany in 2009, and we're looking forward to this publication in English so we can have Dr. Mousavi back here once again. He has carried out excavations in Iran, in Turkey, and in France. He is the field director of a restoration and research project at the site of Pasargad in Iran since 2006, which, if you don't know, Pasargad is the burial area of King Cyrus the Great. He has contributed to the registration of a dozen of important monuments and sites on the World Heritage List of UNESCO, so that's also wonderful. And currently, he is the assistant curator of the Ancient Iranian and Near Eastern Art in Los Angeles in the Museum of LA County Museum of Art. So without further ado, I invite Dr. Ali Mousavi to join us on the stage. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Mariam. I should thank Bowers Museum and again Mariam Moulevi and all of you who are here for this lecture. I need to correct something that she said about my being the field director of an ongoing project. This project, I had this project for a couple of years, and then the situation changed in Iran, so I am no longer the field director or director of any project in Iran, given the present situation. What I'm going to present today is a slightly different, expanded, modified version of a talk I gave first in LA and then in New York for the American Institute for Iranian Art and Archaeology a year ago in a small colloquium. I chose this topic because not because it's not, it's the United States it's an American museum, but because the work of American archaeologists has had a long-lasting impact on the archaeological research in Iran. Actually, the time period will be 1900 up to 1979. Then I'm going to talk briefly about maybe recent years. Let me give you first a very general background of US-Iran relations. The United States' initial interest in Iran was almost entirely restricted to concerns with the well-being of the American Presbyterian missionaries who had been arriving in Iran in the 1830s. The origins of US-Iran diplomatic relations go back only to the second half of the 19th century, when Tehran was looking to establish relations with Washington as a potential ally in opposition to British and Russian pressure and influence in Iran. Formal relations between the two countries commenced with the opening of the US legation in Tehran in 1883, with the sending of the first American minister or ambassador to Persia, who was this gentleman, Samuel Green Wheeler Benjamin. He had a literary background, and he wrote the first, let's say, journal book on Persia and the history of Iran and Persia, which was published in 1886 in New York. Then Nasruddin Shah, the Qajar king, decided to send an envoy to Washington in 1888, and the first Iranian representative was the man known better as Haji Washington, Persia's first ambassador to the United States between 1888 and 89. There is a film actually called Haji Washington, and here you see him with President Cleveland. It's a funny movie in Persian with English subtitle. The United States didn't have any imperialistic ambition in the Middle East at that time, at least, and Tehran regarded the US as a potential third power that could counter British and Russian influence in Iran. Washington's policy towards Iran after World War II eroded this image of a benevolent great power, and finally changed completely after the coup of 1953. It was not until the Iranian constitutional revolution that the US first found itself briefly on the verge of involvement in Iranian politics in opposition to British and Russian imperialism. The revolution in Iran in 1906 resulted in the proclamation of a constitutional monarchy. In 1907, Great Britain and Russia divided Iran into two spheres of influence that added to their already bad reputation. And by the early years of the 20th century, many Iranian nationalists had already formed a positive image of the US as a disinterested defender of the weaker nations. This image was buttressed by the death of a young American Presbyterian missionary teacher, Howard Baskerville, while fighting on the side of the Iranian revolutionists in Tabriz in opposition to the Russian-backed royalist forces in 1908. And some of you may know about the hiring of Morgan Schuster and his American associates in 1910, 1911 as financial advisors to help the Iranian government to manage assets and consolidate debts. Schuster became Treasurer General of Persia, but he was soon dismissed and had to leave the country under the Russian and British pressure, and he later published his famous book, The Strangling of Persia. It's a very readable book.